This and That with Me and You is a podcast where we discuss some pretty dark and disturbing things.
I talk about true crimes and cults and a lot of death.
And I talk about the creepier stuff like paranormal, supernatural, and cryptids.
Viewer discretion is advised while listening to us. Warning.
All right, let's get into this. Episode 21.
Holy shit, 21 episodes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we're moving on up.
All right.
Won't be long, and we'll be at our literal 6-month mark of this.
Wow.
Yeah, I was tracking it, and I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So you got any updates for anybody this week?
I mean, if I could talk about work, I'd have a lot of crazy shit to tell.
Right.
But I can't because that's a violation of HIPAA and it's really not fair to them. So,
Yeah,
even if
true.
it wasn't. So, but I mean, life has just been kind of moving at a regular pace, like normal routine stuff as far as home. I've been trying to work on myself
Mm-hmm.
a lot lately, and that's kind of what my focus has been about.
Okay.
Um, and the kids,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
Um, Less phone time, more kids stuff. Of course, I spent this entire weekend in front of the laptop, but
I mean, it wasn't really much of a choice because it was mixed between work and podcast, which is still kind of work.
yeah.
So, but I mean, what's that? What's that podcast that you listen to? That's the two lawyers. I think they're lawyers.
Are you talking about I've had it?
Yeah, that
One
one.
of them's a lawyer.
Oh, okay. Um, so you remember on there they had a discussion about like the balance between the relationship. Not the relationship is never 50-50.
Hmm.
So I want to say like our relationship is not balanced. It never is
No,
because
there's times where you're like at a 20 and I have to pick up the 80.
yeah,
Sometimes both of us are at like a 10 and we'll just
yeah,
sit
we're
on the
just
couch and
done.
stare at each other. Like,
But I mean, that being said, I want to say like our relationship truly is not fair because I am not present 5 days a week.
yeah.
And I don't want anybody to think that like Cassie just doesn't do anything on the weekend because I know we've discussed in the past it sounds bad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do a like a good portion of the laundry. Sometimes I do.
Hmm.
It really just depends on the weekend.
And
Um, but I've always been the kind of person that doesn't want to do laundry every day. I want to do it once a week, and I know that makes it a big chore, and I know you don't necessarily agree with that, but it's something we compromised on.
it is something we compromise on. And that aside, I was going to say that like in the past we've discussed how like I always do basically a mainstream worth of chores on the weekend, and it does get frustrating, which is fine. Um, but this weekend, like I knew you had to focus on work, and I knew you had to focus on getting your notes and stuff like that, and I put forth a lot of effort towards trying not to get frustrated with myself over what amount of work was done. Because like our loads of laundry, if it was really broken up in a proper fashion, it's maybe 2 loads, maybe 3 loads.
Yeah.
And unless we have like a lice pandemic again, Jesus
Because that
Christ.
happened like 3 times in a row.
Yeah. And to do it safely, like we washed everything, and that was just a massive amount of work.
Hmm.
But we both chipped in on that. We both did our part.
Yes.
So I know I'm ranting, but I just wanted to clarify because someone has mentioned it to me that, man, it sounds like you literally do so much work on the weekend, even though it's like your time off. And I was like, no, it's a fair trade
Yeah.
because
At
you are
least,
with the kids 5 days a week.
yeah, I mean, I kind of made it clear to you from the moment before you even moved up here,
Mhm.
that I was never going to be Betty Crocker.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was never going to be the woman who always cooked dinner every night, even though I have aspirations to do that, to cook for you all the time, because you don't really get hot meals when you're on the road. And I do feel a lot of empathy about that. It's just not with my personality um, dysfunction. I don't know. With my ADHD, it's just not plausible.
Yeah.
I can set up all the plans in the world, and I do work really hard to have a lot of structure for myself
Hmm.
to encourage accountability.
And for anybody who's aware, or not aware, I should say, I'm pretty sure all of us have ADHD or some form of dysfunction.
Yeah. Well, my
But
therapist thinks that I'm extremely high functioning autistic, which is not even the terminology that's used
yeah.
anymore. But
But what I was going with on that is that that may be the case. We are dysfunctional in our own right, but we have different organization skills
yeah,
and they clash.
yeah,
So the real frustration is not that we have organization or not that we have plans in place. It's that we have different approaches and they clash horribly
I don't know.
at times.
I don't know. I mean, as our relationship has progressed, I feel like we've gotten better at working
Oh
as a
yeah,
team.
we're progressing every single weekend.
Yeah, especially like if you compare like when we first moved into the house and we were painting Annie's room
Oh,
to like
listen,
now,
we've had
like
that discussion. I feel like
that was like the worst ever. Like it literally, there was no power in the house. There was no way to have AC. We hadn't moved in yet, and I was just like so determined to have the kids' bedroom
she was
ready.
nesting. Okay, she was nesting 100%. There's
And it
no
wasn't even
denying
the
it.
baby's room. It was I wanted Annie's transition into a new home to be smooth
Mm.
and have her room set up and ready to go. And it was just like not happening. Every step
Aside,
got worse and worse and worse. We should have never moved that paneling. We should have left
oh
that
god,
shit
yeah, no, that was
right the
bad.
fuck where it was.
But I mean, even aside from that, like the complications of the bedroom wasn't even the thing. We finished the room before we moved in. We got everything up to par, save for electricity, because that was weird.
Yeah.
But she still didn't transition home to home
At
situation.
all.
No, that was
Well,
not
at
a thing.
all. That's when all the trouble. Well, I would say that Annie's always been strong willed and independent and a
Yeah,
lot like her mom and stubborn. But she's never had, she was always a pretty good kid that listened for the most part
yeah,
until we moved. Things started to get a little awry there at first, where she was starting to act out for attention more. And then once we had Eli, that all hell broke loose.
and it's not even her fault.
It's not her fault.
Because it's
I'm not trying to
confusion.
talk shit about her. She's a
No,
wonderful little girl.
it's a lot of confusion. It's a lot
Yeah.
of adjustment, and
She's the best thing that ever happened to me. I say it all the time.
yeah,
She made me a mom.
and even for
I'm gonna
us
cry.
adults,
Sorry.
even for us adults, it was a hell of an adjustment because I was moving all the way across the country, basically. Whether you want to consider it from the south to the north, or if you want to consider it from being a Midwesterner to a Northerner, it, the whole shift of states thing was a weird adjustment for me because both areas I was in at the time were not like New York.
No, New York's a hard state to live in. It's expensive as fuck.
Yeah,
Um, I
but
think that's the big part, and there's a lot more laws and rules and regulations about things that are a lot more lax the further south you go.
I think they go hand in hand because
Yeah.
like things that are important up here, or okay, things that are important in New York are not in Indiana, and we're not in Georgia,
You know
so
what?
and the opposite.
I will say one thing. If we lived in the South, I probably would have a hard time finding a job in what I love to do.
So adjustments aside, and our ramblings for a while, do you have anything else in particular to discuss?
No, your mom's coming up.
Yeah, And weird timing too, because it's 2 weeks before the wedding, and she doesn't want to be present for the wedding.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I don't know.
Is it
And it's only like
yeah.
literally 2 days, so
Yeah, but I mean, it's fine.
yeah.
It's nice that she's coming up. At least I have weekends off now, so I can be around.
Yeah, we can actually try to do something.
Yeah.
Um the well, I do have a couple updates. Um and they literally pertain to last week's episode. So when we discussed all those wars and you kept calling it the Iraqi war, um shout out to my best man. He told me that basically everything is encompassed under the term Gulf War, and I was unaware of that. So I have to
You know
double.
what? I knew that kinda, sorta, because my dad's coworker. Well, I wouldn't say coworker, a business partner, because my dad owned the business, and he started out working for him, and then became his partner.
Right.
He was a he fought in the Gulf War.
I
I have
thought the
that
Gulf War.
canteen that I have with my name on it. That's he gave it to me.
Uh, I for some reason I thought the Gulf War was like its own individual event.
So did I. I was like, I kind of knew the Gulf War was in there somewhere.
Right. So I mean, I would have to double check, but he's more into military history than I am, so I'm gonna trust him on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I really love to read about like Vietnam and World War II and World War One, but the more recent stuff, I mean, no offense, it's just not as interesting to me. I don't know
Okay,
why.
you midlife father figure. That's literally the like midlife father figure is World War II becomes the like inclusive. I've got to watch everything about World War II. That's a stereotype across the board.
Okay, well, I mean, I grew up with my dad
Yeah,
liking kind of stuff, so
right.
I'm sure that's where it comes from.
Yeah. My other update it comes directly from the YouTube video for last week because you wrote in a note while you were editing and I didn't catch it until after I was done. You were talking about the TV series and you had said Enchanted, but you wrote in a little note on the video that you figured out what it was called. It was Once Upon a Time.
Yes,
So for
it
those
didn't
who,
make it in the video.
it's in
Oh,
the
oh,
video.
okay.
It's in the video. It's not in the audio.
Oh, yeah, that's right. For those who listen to
So for
just the
those who
audio,
just listen, it's called Once Upon a Time.
yeah, the
So
show Once Upon a Time.
yeah. So don't scream at her. So you left off last week with Billy the Kid going on the run
Yeah, as a wanted man
as a
on a
wanted
big
man.
cliffhanger.
Yeah. Jerk. So where
So,
are we at? Oh wait. There's one more update. Totally forgot. So a couple weeks ago, Lilith ran away and
hmm
then came back, and this week, Lucy ran away and came back.
but pretty sure he was just under the back porch the entire time.
Yeah, it kind of seemed like it.
They usually, I mean, I did read that they usually stay close to the house, and Lily's all upset that he's back, hissing at him all the
Oh yeah,
time.
she's hissing at him. She's peeing on everything now. She's got this bad habit of peeing on things when she's mad, so
Yeah,
it's frustrating.
yes.
So, that being said, last week you left us on a cliffhanger with Billy the Kid running off as a wanted man. So, where are we at in the story? Because cliffhangers are a jerk move.
Okay, so the kid and what was left of the regulators
Hmm.
just wandered the hills on foot for a while until they stole some horses.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so they decided to make their way to a small Mexican village about 14 miles south of Lincoln County called San Patricio.
Okay.
All right. After laying low for about 2 weeks so as to avoid capture by the new sheriff in town at Lincoln, George Pepin,
Oh, okay.
they rode to the Mescalero Apache Reservation Agency near Blazer's Mill, wherever
Okay.
that is. At this point, it's not just Billy and the regulators. They were joined by three Mexicans, one of them being the former constable Martinez, you know, the guy that
Yeah,
like
yeah. Yeah, I
helped
got you.
them out and made them what they deputized them.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, while the kid and the regulators headed to a spring for some water, the Mexicans continued on down the road to the agency. They ended up bumping into some Mescalero Apache Indians who assumed they were going to steal their horses. So they started shooting at them.
Oh boy.
Indian agent Fred Godfrey and his clerk Morris Bernstein heard the shooting and immediately mounted their horses and headed towards it.
Okay.
So a shootout commences.
Oh boy.
Meanwhile, at the spring, Billy and the regulators are watering their horses when the shootout starts. And suddenly, Billy's horse gets spooked and runs off at the sound of the shooting.
Well, shit.
Yeah. So George Coe pulled Billy up behind him on his horse, and the regulators took off.
Okay.
Taking advantage of the commotion, they rode off toward the agency's corrals. And while the kid was getting himself a new horse, the others opened the gate and made off with all of the agency's horses and mules.
Wow, that's ballsy.
So the
Probably strategic, but it's ballsy.
yeah. So the clerk Morris Bernstein was shot and killed by the former constable Martinez.
Mm-hmm.
And while this was happening, even though Martinez admitted to shooting him in self-defense and turned himself in for the murder, guess who took the blame for that murder?
Billy the Kid.
He wasn't even there.
Yeah, I mean, you said that on the last one too. But, like, I mean, he was there, but he was. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the regulators rode north to Fort Sumner, an old army fort turned into a Mexican village.
Yep.
Yeah. So this place would pretty much become a home for Billy the Kid and the regulators. They lived a wild party life there, drinking, dancing, having fun with all the pretty senoritas in town.
Yeah.
Just, living it up. However, as time...
Living la vida loca. Oh, sorry.
So as time went on, the Coe cousins and Fred Waite grew tired of living on the lam.
Yeah.
And they wanted to settle down, so they quit the regulators.
Mm-hmm.
The kid, however, was still having fun, so he and the regulators decided to go back to Lincoln.
Oh, okay.
Probably not a smart move.
Yeah. No, probably not.
So after taunting and intimidating his enemies in Lincoln, the kid and his gang went and raided Fritz Ranch and made off with some horses.
Oh, okay.
They then headed to the Texas Panhandle and sold the horses in Tascosa, Texas.
I don't know. I'm from Texas, but not that area.
The Tascosa residents didn't seem to care about the gang's presence in town as long as they kept in line, pretty much.
Yeah.
And much like anywhere he went, Billy partied every night, courted women, and competed in target shooting and horse racing.
Yeah, sounds like a day-to-day life.
Yeah. So while the kid was partying it up in Tascosa, things back in Lincoln were not going the greatest.
Yeah.
The residents were, however, excited to learn that Governor Axtell was finally replaced by a retired general named Lew Wallace.
Okay.
However, all hell's breaking loose in town because John Selman formed a ruthless gang called the Rustlers.
Ah.
A gang that consisted of the most dangerous men in the area, most of them being former members of the Boys, the gang from last week.
Yeah.
Okay. So they were having a good old time raiding all the ranches in town and burning them to the ground, killing anyone and everyone that got in their way. They also gang raped a young woman and killed 2 young Mexican boys just for shits and gigs.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. When asked who the hell they were, they like to say, "We are the devils that just come from hell."
Nah, they're just pieces of shit.
Yeah. This gang far surpassed anything Billy the Kid and the regulators did. But Billy the Kid is the one in the history books as New Mexico's sole terrorist.
Ah.
So the regulators eventually broke up in Tascosa. Billy and his longtime buddy Tom this guy's name is going to come up a lot, and I can't fucking say it. Okay. Tom O'Folliard. O'Folliard?
We'll spell it.
O''Folliard. O'Folliard?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Tom O'Folliard. Okay. They returned to New Mexico and Lincoln County.
Yeah. All
I,
right.
he literally could have gone anywhere else in the Americas.
Yeah, but something about home.
But, it had been less than 2 months since Billy the Kid had been in Lincoln County last.
Yeah.
Things, however, in Lincoln County had actually started to die down
Hmm.
because the new governor had offered an amnesty proclamation in order to put a final end to the Lincoln County War.
Right.
So, since everyone else was being forgiven, the kid thought, why not me too?
Yeah. I mean, makes sense.
However, he had a feeling he wouldn't qualify for a pardon from the governor, so he
Hmm.
decided to settle things with his enemies in Lincoln County.
That's dumb.
So, with good intentions, he sent out a peace offer to James Dolan, you remember him,
Yeah.
and Jesse Evans.
Okay.
Okay, Jesse Evans was the leader of the boys' gang. James Dolan was the Irishman, the rival owner of the store and cattle ranch that Billy, he worked for him first with the boys, and then he went in jail and worked for the other guy that died.
Right.
So,
Right.
anyway,
Yeah.
he sends a peace treaty out to them, or a peace offer.
Okay.
So, literally his enemies from the Lincoln County War. All
Yeah.
right. So, on February 18th, 1879, both sides of the Lincoln County War met for parley. After some tense moments started by Jesse Evans wanting to kill the kid on the spot, both sides calmed down and talked it out.
Oh. Okay.
Meanwhile, the new sheriff Kimbrough hightailed it to Fort Stanton to get military assistance to arrest Billy the Kid.
Oh.
Now back in Lincoln, the two sides finally come to an agreement. So this was the official agreement. Neither side will kill any member of the other side without first giving notice of withdrawing from the treaty.
Okay.
Any friends of either groups are included in the agreement and are not to be messed with. No officer or soldier are to be killed for any act made previous to the date of the agreement.
Okay.
No party can testify against another party. Any party must aid the other in avoiding capture or help in their escape.
That's a hell of a treaty.
Lastly, anyone who failed to carry out any of this or decided to break the agreement would be killed on sight.
Wow.
So, after a round of handshakes and swearing to the treaty, the two sides went to celebrate at every single damn saloon in town.
Okay.
So, the hour was late.
Hmm.
The men were drunk as they staggered from one tavern to the next. Then the men bumped into Mrs. McSween's attorney, Houston Chapman.
Uh.
You see, Mrs. McSween was going after the Dolan faction and Colonel Dudley for the death of her husband, being caught in the crossfire during the shootout.
Right. I do
Okay.
remember this.
Which put a big old target on her and her attorney, obviously.
Hey, yeah.
So Dolan and his men stopped the attorney on the street and began to harass and threaten him.
Oh no.
The kid, who would go on to account later that he was most likely the only sober one in the group, and he sensed it was going to get out of hand and that
Hmm.
someone was going to die.
Yeah.
So the kid, he tried to walk away, but Jesse Evans blocked him and made him stay.
Okay.
So Bill Campbell, a friend of both Evans and Dolan, pulled out his gun and pointed it at Chapman.
Oh.
Dolan then also pulled out his gun and then fired it in the ground near Chapman. Reacting to the sound, Campbell fired his weapon, shooting Chapman in the chest and killing him.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So the Dolan men then poured whiskey on his body and set him on fire.
Whoa.
And they walked away celebrating as his body burst into flames.
That escalated very quickly.
Yeah, well, I mean, they already killed him.
Yeah. Why?
So the kid and Tom O'Fallard had no choice but to follow the men to a restaurant.
Yeah.
While eating oysters, Dolan suggested that one of them should go back and plant a gun on Chapman's body so it can look like a self-defense shooting.
But
they
you
already
lit
set
him on fire.
That's what I thought. Billy the Kid, and Tom were oh so super eager to get away from the group, so they volunteered to do so.
Like, get my ass out of here.
But instead, they promptly mounted their horses and hightailed it the fuck out of town.
Yeah.
So, outraged by the cold blooded killing of the attorney, Governor Wallace went to Lincoln County himself to oversee the arrest of the killers.
Right.
And while talking to the locals, he learned that Billy the Kid was an eyewitness to the killing.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm. So Wallace put out a warrant for his arrest.
Oh.
So this is where the kids put in a bit of a conundrum. Does he snitch to the governor to get a pardon and settle down?
Or does he uphold the treaty, quote unquote?
Ultimately putting a target on himself by breaking the treaty with the gang.
Right.
Yeah. I think Billy saw what happened to Chapman. This is just my take based on his personality, as wrong.
Yeah.
From what we have learned so far, Billy wasn't a ruthless murderer.
Yeah, I was gonna say he does kind of have a moral high ground.
He doesn't. He only ever seems to kill by accident or in self-defense.
Right.
So, also, he might want to stop being on the run someday and get the chance to settle down and have a life.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's everyone's hope.
Yeah. So Billy decided this would be a big gamble in his life, but well worth it if it all works out.
Yeah.
So on March 13th, 1879, the kid wrote to the governor and offered to testify against Chapman's murderers in exchange to have indictments annulled. All of his indictments annulled.
Okay.
Okay. The governor wrote back and invited the kid to come back to Lincoln and meet in person, of course.
Well, can we meet in the middle?
In his letter, he wrote, quote, I have the authority to exempt you from prosecution if you will testify to what you say you know. And he closed with, quote, if you could trust Jesse Evans, you can trust me, end quote.
That doesn't make me feel any better. Just saying.
Right. So on March 17th, the kid met the governor in Lincoln. So during this meeting, Governor Lew Wallace made the promise the kid had hoped for, and the agreement was made.
Can we reiterate how old he might be at this point in time? Because it seems like a very teenager.
Like 17?
Yeah. Seems like a very teenager, gullible thing to do.
Yeah. The kid would submit to a fake arrest, testify against Chapman's killers, James Dolan, and Colonel Dudley for a full pardon.
Mm-hmm.
A couple days later, the kid and Tom O'Fallard surrendered to Sheriff Kimbrell.
Okay.
As planned, and were confined at Patron's store. So the governor interviewed Billy the Kid, and he told him everything, like about what happened to Mrs. McSweeney. Is that what the name?
Yeah, McSweeney Todd.
Yeah. Mix something. Hurt that lady. About that. About what happened with everyone. All the killings. Like he turned state's evidence over on these people and broke the treaty. Okay.
Right.
The following month, the kid began all of his court appearances.
Okay.
However, due to the fact that the presiding judge Bristol and prosecutor William Reinerson were Dolan men,
yeah,
all of the defendants were either pardoned under the governor's proclamation or acquitted.
Of course.
Even O'Fallard was given amnesty.
Wow.
But not the kid.
Wow. Again, I say gullible teenager.
Yeah. Figures he did the right thing and got the short end of the stick. So
pretty much
his enemies were dead set on not letting him get away. So the prosecutor Reinerson refused to honor the governor's pardon.
Oh, okay.
And he got a change of venue on Billy's trial to Doña County.
Gotcha.
So instead of being tried in Lincoln County, where he would have most likely been acquitted because of that amnesty thing,
right?
He was going to go somewhere in a very biased courtroom.
Yeah.
So also the governor decided to back out on the pardon instead of going to bat for him.
Wow.
And the governor decided to head back to Santa Fe and work on writing his book, leaving Billy the Kid to hang, pretty much.
Jerk.
So the kid had been used by everyone.
Yeah, most definitely.
For this. He made his enemies even bigger enemies.
Yep.
He helped Mrs. McSween get justice for her husband's death. McSween, that's what it was.
Like I said, McSweeney Todd.
Yeah. He helped the law and the governor, and he was just a sitting duck for the Dolan's men to come and try and kill him now.
That's so fucked up.
Yeah. So the guards where he was being held knew about his predicament and must have took pity on him because they didn't stop him and Tom O'Fallard from just simply walking out of the jail.
Well, that's decent, I guess.
The kid, once again, looking for a fresh start in life, is on the run and a wanted man.
Yep.
So, with really no choice at this point, Billy decides to go back to his outlaw ways.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like he has much of a choice.
Yeah. While in Fort Sumner, the kid reunited with some old friends, former regulators Charlie Bowdry and Doc Skurlock.
Okay.
And in order to make some much needed money, he started rustling cattle from John Chisholm's herd.
Oh.
The kid believed Chisholm owed him some fighting wages during the late Lincoln County War, but Chisholm didn't see it that way.
Right.
On January 10th, 1880, the kid was in a saloon in Fort Sumner having drinks with Jim Chisholm, John's brother.
Okay.
And a couple of his cowboys.
Yeah.
The kid encountered a drunk that was seemingly trying to start trouble with him. He was being loudmouthed and obnoxious toward him.
There's always one.
Yeah. This guy's name was Joe Grant.
Okay.
And at some point in the night, Joe Grant decided to declare that he was going to kill somebody before the night was over to the bar. Billy had a good idea who he wanted to kill.
Yeah.
So as the evening went on, Joe was getting more and more obnoxious. And then Joe noticed that one of the Chisholm cowboys had a nice ivory-handled revolver. So he took it and replaced it as his own. And the cowboy decided it was better not to contest this.
To be clear on, because I found this out recently, this is how I know. Apparently, this was a thing in old Western saloons. You didn't just walk in and like have your guns on you at all times. It wasn't a thing. They actually made you hang them up by the front door. And that's why that would be possible. Because most people would notice their gun being shifted.
Right.
Just saying.
So the kid saw this as an opportunity. The kid knew the cowboy had fired that gun earlier in the day at a target. So he lifted Grant's stolen gun out of the holster, like he was admiring it.
Right.
As he was doing this, he spun the cylinder so the hammer would hit the empty used shell instead of a live round next time it was fired.
Yep.
Yeah. Sure enough, later on, when Billy turned his back to walk out the door, Grant drew his gun and fired, but the gun only went click. Yep. Once the kid heard the click, he spun around, drew his weapon, and fired. Joe Grant was dead. However, this killing was dismissed as just another bar brawl, and the kid was never charged for that.
Yeah, of all things.
Right?
Of all of these, that's the what he does.
But I feel like that one's like self-defense straight up. Like, if he hadn't have fucked with the gun, he would have died.
Okay, but here's the problem on that one. He did fuck with the gun, so it was self-aware.
Yes, there was some premeditation, but he also knew if he waited long enough for him to fix the gun, he would have been dead.
Well, if it's a 6-shooter, all he would have had to do is cock it again.
Exactly.
But acknowledging that you heard the click means haul the fuck ass. Like, immediately move. But, so, okay, moving on, because that's he didn't get charged for it, so it doesn't matter, but
anyway, by now the kid was 18 or 19 when this happened. Yeah. And he had spent the last 5 years of his life on the run.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah. While riding out of Lincoln, he had caused quite a stir stealing that cattle, and he dabbled a little bit in counterfeiting too.
Oh.
His enemies in Lincoln had power, and they were using that power to single out the kid. Despite the fact that Lincoln County was riddled with outlaws doing horrible things at the time, the newspapers were only writing about Billy.
Well, yeah.
Making him out to be a much bigger criminal than he ever was.
As a recent podcast has stated, you have to go extremely far back in time before the media actually presented real truth.
So, the kid was tired of living on the lam to begin with, before he even started back up again.
Yeah.
So again, before he's even on the lam again. He's trying to reach out for help so he can lead a normal life.
Mm-hmm.
He writes to an attorney that helped him with his treaty with the governor, Ira Leonard.
Okay.
So the kid reached out to this attorney to help him dig himself out of this hole.
Mm-hmm.
Leonard ended up sending him a note that there was still hope for him yet and to meet him in White Oaks in Lincoln County.
I don't trust it.
At the same time that this exchange was happening, a tall, lanky man by the name of Pat Garrett won the election for sheriff of Lincoln County.
Here we go.
Garrett and Billy knew each other from Fort Sumner.
Mm-hmm.
Pat was a cowhand for Pete Maxwell in the arena, and then he was a bartender in one of the Fort saloons. So they would have known each other pretty well because Pete Maxwell was a friend of Billy's.
Yeah, at least decently.
Yeah. So it is believed that maybe Pat Garrett rustled cattle with the kid at some point because he knew where all of the kids' hideouts were.
Right.
However, it is not believed that they were friendly, at least not by this time, because Billy wasn't too happy about Pat Garrett winning the election, and he had favored his opponent, the former Sheriff Kimbrell.
Yeah.
So the kid arrived in White Oaks to meet with Leonard, but the attorney was not there.
But Pat was?
No, probably because the kid was 6 weeks late.
Oh, holy shit.
Yeah. The kid found out that Leonard was in Lincoln, so he and his friends stocked up on supplies at a store, possibly not paying for said supplies, and rode out to head for Lincoln again. Like, what the fuck, dude?
Why? Just stay away from Lincoln.
So a posse coming from White Oaks, led by James Carlisle, went after the gang and snuck up on them at a camp.
Okay.
Gunfire broke out. The outlaws scattered to their horses to make a break. The kid's horse was shot down from under him, and he ran off on foot. Even though they were caught by surprise, they got away.
Right.
Yeah, but not for long.
Yeah, of course not.
4 days later, the posse caught up with the kid and his gang hiding out at a ranch owned by Jim Greathouse.
Okay.
The house was surrounded, so the kid invited the posse's leader, Deputy Carlisle, to come in for a chat.
Hmm.
To guarantee the deputy's safety, Greathouse offered himself up as a hostage to the posse.
All right.
So Carlisle went in. The kid learned that Carlisle had no warrants for their arrest. So he refused to surrender and told Carlisle he would be staying and leading them out when they make a break at nightfall.
All right.
That was his plan for escape. The posse outside was starting to get anxious. Notes were being exchanged back and forth with Greathouse's partner, Fred Kutch, acting as messenger.
Okay.
So the posse finally decided to demand that if Carlisle wasn't released in 5 minutes, that Greathouse would be killed. What happened?
It's just dawning on me that this is literally a hostage situation, and they don't have telephones or any, radio, whatever. So there's literally some dude running back and forth with notes between the two of them.
Yes.
Okay, I'm tracking.
So what happens next is up for debate.
Okay.
Kutch and the ranch cook, Joe Steck, were told by the posse to make for cover because the posse was going to rush the house.
Oh, shit.
No sooner did the two men make a run for it, a single shot was fired, followed by a window shattering and a shadowy figure making a run for it, followed by a burst of gunfire.
Oh, wow.
The sprinting man then fell dead, and it was Deputy Carlisle.
Oh, no. Well. Yeah.
So this is the posse's story.
Okay.
Then an accidental shot was fired from their side, and they saw Carlisle jump from the window and tried to make a run for it. Then the kid threw himself halfway out the window, took deliberate aim, and shot him in cold blood.
You know what I think happened?
Another posse member, James Bell, later, after Billy was captured for this, claimed that Dave Rudaba, another gang member, confessed that both he and Bill Wilson, another gang member, fired one shot each, and the kid twice at Carlisle. Now, what do you think?
I personally think what happened was somebody got antsy on the trigger finger, popped one off on accident. Sheriff took advantage of this, jumped out the back window, And all they saw was somebody jump out the back window taking a run for it. So bang, bang, bang. I think they took him out and didn't mean to.
So, in a letter to the governor concerning the Carlisle incident, Billy the Kid wrote that when Carlisle heard the gunshot outside, he thought Greathouse was killed, and he dove out the window and was killed by his own posse, thinking it was Billy trying to escape.
See? Called it.
So Cush and Stack accounted about 60 to 75 shots were fired at us, bullets flying from all directions. That's a quote.
Okay. That's a lot.
Yes.
I mean, in a way, it's a lot.
So, sounds like some trigger happy shit was going on.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Most definitely.
after Carlisle was killed, the confused posse left. And with the coast clear, the kid and the gang just rode out.
Nice.
So, answer me this. Why would a posse that came after the kid kills their leader, just hightail it out of there without capturing the killer of their leader?
Again, I state.
Sadly, to this day, it's in the history books that Billy the Kid killed James Carlisle with no evidence to support it.
Well, it sounds like there's not a whole lot of evidence to support a whole lot of anything, so.
Also, Billy the Kid and his gang were never indicted for the murder of James Carlisle.
Okay.
Probably because the members of the posse thought that silence was the best route to take on covering this up.
Yeah. I mean, it worked.
It did work. After this, the kid and his gang rode out towards Fort Sumner to get supplies. So, like, they just keep going to the same fucking places. It's just...
Well,
so,
okay, but you also have to remember, this is New Mexico in the 1800s, late 1800s. That was probably a supply point. There wasn't very many of those at the time.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, I keep going back to, the Oregon Trail. You died of dysentery.
So the kid decided enough was enough. There was no chance of clearing things up. And it was best to kiss New Mexico goodbye once and for all.
Yeah. Damn, I just realized how I just aged myself pretty badly by saying the Oregon Trail.
Yeah. However, the new Lincoln County Sheriff Pat Garrett had plans of his own.
Of course he did.
He too was heading to Fort Sumner. He was hell-bent on capturing the kid, not only for the money, but for the fame that would come with capturing the most notorious outlaw in all of New Mexico.
Yep. Fame and fortune every time.
So it was December 18th, 1880. Billy has been leading Pat Garrett on quite the cat and mouse chase up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Pat was in Fort Sumner looking for the kid. The kid was actually hiding out at a nearby ranch out of town owned by Tom Wilcox and Manuel Brazil.
Okay.
So the kid received a note from Fort Sumner stating that Pat Garrett had given up and headed back to Lincoln.
Okay.
This was a lie. Pat had written the note, and it was setting a trap for Billy.
Yeah. All right.
As the kid and his gang, which consisted of 4 members by this time, Dave Rudaba, Tom O'Fallard, Billy Wilson, and Tom Pickett, rode towards the hospital in town where Pat just so happened to be hiding out, waiting for Billy to come to town.
Okay.
Pat whispered to his men, "That's them," and his men opened fire.
Wow.
The men believed the person heading up the group in the front was the kid, but it wasn't. It was Tom O'Fallard.
It's dumb. Never assume. Like, you need to have a clear line of sight on everything before you... Never. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
So they aimed for him, shot him in the chest, and he keeled over on his saddle.
Wow.
The kid and the others kept riding away, hellbound for leather, just trying to make it out alive.
Yeah.
So the lawmen figured because it was dark and snow was coming down hard, that there would be no use to chase after them until the morning. So they carried O'Fallard inside a room in the old hospital and laid him down on the floor. And the men played poker while Tom O'Fallard, Billy the Kid's best friend, with whom he shared many adventures, died on the floor.
Man, that's rough.
Yeah. So the kid and his friends rode back to Wilcox and Brazil's ranch, ate a hot meal, did the best they could to get their wits back, and then departed.
Right.
The cat and mouse chase resumed for 3 more days.
Oh, okay.
Until one night, Garrett tracked the kid down to a stone house in Stinking Springs.
What a
That's what it's
name.
called, Stinking Springs. The lawmen waited quietly outside until dawn, until they heard movement and voices coming from inside the house.
Okay.
Suddenly, a figure came out of the house. Pat Garrett recognized the wide brim of the hat that the kid always liked to wear, and he told his men to shoot. Once again, the
I
lawman shot the wrong man.
was gonna say, if by chance the kid had any brains in him at this point, he'd recognize that, hey, my hat is recognizable, and have somebody else fucking wear it.
This time it was Charlie Bowdry,
Oh,
another member of his gang and a longtime friend.
yeah.
The wounded man fell back into the house. A few minutes went by, and Wilson yelled out that Bowdry was dying and that he wanted to come out.
Okay.
When Bowdry staggered from the house, he walked towards the men and collapsed dead in the snow.
Gotcha.
So the outlaws refused to surrender and even attempted to escape.
Okay.
Garrett noticed one of the horses was being reeled in through the door.
Mm-hmm.
The kids' plan was for them to get mounted on their horses inside, then to burst through the door and take their chances.
It's a hell of a attempt.
I mean, it's something.
It's something.
The sheriff knew what he was up to and shot the poor horse dead,
Oh,
which then blocked the doorway.
well, that sucks.
Now the men were really trapped. After their
Yeah.
attempted escape, there was a standoff.
Of course.
But by the afternoon, the hungry outlaws couldn't take it anymore, smelling the food the lawmen were cooking nearby over the fire.
That's a dick move.
Yes. The freezing cold and hungry outlaws finally gave themselves up.
Yeah. It's smart, but that's a dick move.
So after they ate, they packed up and headed to Wilcox and Brazil's ranch, where they stayed for the night with them as prisoners.
Okay.
Okay. The next morning, they headed to Fort Sumner, where they delivered the body of Charlie Bowdry to his wife. She went into hysterics is how it was labeled,
I don't doubt it.
and actually attacked the men for killing her husband, which, yeah, same.
Yeah.
So the prisoners were then taken to a blacksmith to be shackled.
Okay.
During this brief stay is when allegedly Billy gave his two most prized possessions to posse members Jim East and Frank Stewart. Jim East and Frank Stewart claimed that they had become friendly with Billy during this traveling period.
Okay.
He gave his Winchester rifle to East and his prized mare to Stewart. I say allegedly because what more likely happened is Pat Garrett confiscated these things
Yeah.
and gave these items to them because Billy later filed a lawsuit against them to get his mare back.
Oh.
So the next morning, the prisoners were loaded onto a wagon and headed out to Las Vegas.
Okay.
On December 26th, they arrived in Vegas, being greeted by curious onlookers who wanted to catch a glimpse of the famous Billy the Kid.
Yeah.
At the jail, the kid and other prisoners were treated to new clothes, and the kid was said to be in good spirits, playing to the crowd and chatting with a reporter.
Okay.
During his time in jail in Vegas, the kid had many interviews with reporters through the bars of his cell. Every time he reported that half the stuff that had been written about him isn't true and that it was all exaggerated way out of proportion.
Which kind of sounds about accurate.
Yeah. And Dave Rudabaugh also corroborated everything he said to the reporters.
Wow.
So after the interviews, they were jailed for the night in a hole in the wall, quote.
Yeah.
That's what it was. They said they called it. So the next morning, they were taken to a train depot where they encountered a mob that was after Rudabaugh for killing a Las Vegas jailer several months earlier.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Luckily, the mob was kept under control and the prisoners were put on a train to Santa Fe.
Okay.
So the prisoners were taken to the jail in Santa Fe and locked up, and Garrett headed back to Lincoln County.
Okay.
From the moment he was captured, the gears in the kids' heads were turning on how to save his neck.
Right.
Okay. First, he tried to escape. The kid and his cohorts attempted to dig their way out through the dirt floor of the cell, but the guards noticed the hole and they were separated.
Right.
The kid receiving the worst of it, being chained and locked in a dark, tiny, solitary cell.
Okay.
Next, he tried an attorney, Ira Leonard, again, who visited the kid in jail, but lost interest in helping him and didn't come back until weeks later.
Wow.
Then he tried Rutaba's attorney, Edgar, I can't say this guy's last name, Calepless, Caypless.
Calipus?
Calepless?
Sure.
Edgar.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
But Edgar didn't want to work for free. So Billy offered him his prize mare,
Oh my God.
which was in the possession of Stewart, hence him filing the lawsuit to get it back.
Yep.
But Edgar also lost interest
Oh.
and didn't really want to work on the case. So,
I'm wondering why people would lose interest in this case.
right? So the kid then took to pencil and paper and tried writing to the governor again with no avail.
Yeah.
The kid had become too well known. He was never going to get held up on that deal with the kid.
Right.
It was just not going to happen, even though the kid delivered on his side.
Right.
On March 28th, 1881, the kid was removed from the Santa Fe jail and taken by train to Mesilla, where he was to be tried for the killing of Sheriff Brady and Buckshot Roberts.
Okay.
We talked about them last week.
Right.
So when the kid and lawmen arrived in Rincon, just hours away from Mesilla, a mob confronted them.
Okay.
Most likely, by the description of the crowd, it was a lynch mob.
Oh boy.
The lawmen, not sure if they were attempting to free him or lynch him at first, told the kid that if the mob rushed them, they would shoot him first before the mob got to him.
Goddamn.
You know, I guess they didn't believe in a court of law, innocent until proven guilty.
I feel like nobody does.
However, the next morning, the kid was loaded into a coach and made the trip to Mesilla in one piece.
Okay.
So the first trial began on March 30th with the biased judge Bristol presiding,
Right.
and attorney Ira Leonard appointed to defend him.
Okay.
So the first trial was for the killing of Buckshot Roberts, which Leonard was able to have thrown out, since the murder did not happen on federal land but on private property,
All right.
and therefore the government had no jurisdiction.
Back in the times, that was the case.
Okay. The prosecution did not really fight it because they knew they were going to get him for the murder of Sheriff Brady.
Yeah.
So the following day, the kid was tried for the death of Lincoln County Sheriff William Brady.
Okay.
Remember, the kid was one of 6 men and not the leader of the regulators at the time that he was involved in the killing of Brady, but he was the only one indicted and placed on trial.
Right.
So the judge ended up dismissing Leonard because he was doing too good of a job defending him.
Really?
Yes!
No. Okay.
He then appointed 2 unprepared and unsympathetic to their client attorneys, John D. Bale and Albert Fountain. Fountain was a supporter of the Santa Fe Ring and hated rustlers.
Oh. Well.
They had prejudiced witnesses to testify against the kid, including Bill Matthews, one of the men responsible for Tunstall's death, the man that he
Right.
worked for. So the kid had 0 witnesses summoned to testify on his behalf.
Shit.
Yeah.
Things were just stacked against him.
Then the judge put the final nail in the coffin.
Okay.
His jury instructions were, and I quote, "If he was present, encouraging, inciting, aiding in, abetting, advising, or commanding this killing of Brady, he is as much guilty as though he fired the fatal shot. As to you, what would or would not be a reasonable doubt of guilt? I charge you that belief in the guilt of this defendant to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt does not require you to so believe absolutely and to a mathematical certainty. That is, to justify a verdict of guilty is not necessary for you to be certain that this defendant is guilty, as you are that 2 + 2 = 4.
So
Merely a vague conjecture of a bare possibility that the defendant may be innocent is not sufficient to cause a reasonable doubt of his guilt."
So that judge shouldn't have been there. Is
Yeah.
what we're coming
In
up with.
plain English, if you don't find this defendant guilty, then you're wrong. And that's exactly what they did. They found him guilty.
Right.
On April 13th, the kid was brought before the judge and was asked if he had anything to say. And the kid said no. The judge then sentenced the kid to death on May 13th, 1881, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. He would be taken to Lincoln and be hanged by the neck until his body be dead.
Mm. Ooh, wait a minute. I wonder if this is the escape that I know about.
But the kid wasn't ready to give up yet.
Yep.
Albert Fountain was willing to appeal his case if the kid could pay for it. So he again attempted to get his horse back by writing to that other attorney whose last name I can't say,
Yeah.
but to no avail.
Okay.
So the appeal didn't really, it lost momentum as soon as it started.
Yeah.
So the kid's only hope was escape.
Yep. Here it is.
So the day after the kid's sentencing, he was loaded up into a coach for the 5-day trip to Lincoln. And again, he was told if there was any attempt to rescue him or a lynch mob, the guards would be killing the kid first.
Wow.
Yes, before anyone could get to him. So there were 7 heavily armed men in the escort, including Bill Matthews, John Kenny, the king of the rustlers, and Bob Ollinger. All 3 fought on the Dolan side in the Lincoln County War and were obviously prejudiced towards the kid.
A little bit.
So the kid and Ollinger had a mutual hate for one another. Ollinger had killed his longtime friend John Jones, and the kid definitely wanted to kill him for revenge.
Yeah.
So during the long trip to Lincoln, Ollinger definitely took advantage of the kid's helpless situation by taunting him and provoking him to escape.
Oh boy.
The kid kept his cool for the trip, however, knowing damn well he would be shot at the slightest wrong move.
Yeah.
So finally, on April 21st, the kid arrived in Lincoln.
Okay.
Oh, again.
Again.
Against his own will this time.
Well, at least there's that.
There was no suitable jail for him in town. So the kid was confined in a back room adjoined to Garrett's office in the old 2-story Murphy store, which was now the courthouse.
Right.
He was to remain shackled and handcuffed at all times and was either chained to the floor or a line was drawn across the floor, which he was forbidden to cross or he would be shot.
Ooh.
To eliminate any chances of escape, 2 deputies remained in the room with the kid at all times as a 24-hour guard, and the 2 guards were Ollinger and James Bell.
Yep. Oh man, I'm wanting to see what facts you have behind this one because somebody did an actual testing history theories.
So anyone would think it's hopeless and give up at this point, but not the kid. Those gears in his head are still turning.
Yeah. I mean, nobody ever said he was dumb.
Yeah. But the kid had to wait for the perfect opportunity because if he made any wrong move, Ollinger would use his shotgun to split the kid in 2, which he threatened him every day to do so.
Right.
So about a week after the kid's arrival in Lincoln, Pat Garrett had left Lincoln to collect taxes, leaving his 2 guards in charge.
Mm-hmm.
On April 28th at noon, with only 2 lawmen in the entire town, the kid saw his opportunity.
Yep.
He knew it was Ollinger's turn to take the other prisoners who were confined to the courthouse across the street to a Wortley hotel for lunch. So the kid would receive his meals in his jail cell/room, which meant only Bell would be at the courthouse to watch him.
Mm-hmm.
The kid knew he had better chances with Bell because he wasn't on a big power trip like Ollinger was.
Right.
As soon as Ollinger was long gone with the other prisoners and eating his meal, the kid made his move. So the only time the kid got to leave his room was to use the outhouse. Yep. So at this time, he asked Bell to take him out to the outhouse.
Here we go.
What happened next is widely debated.
Okay.
So the most popular version is the kid went to the outhouse and retrieved a gun from out of the outhouse that was hidden there by a friend.
Mm-hmm.
As he entered the courthouse and climbed the stair, once he reached the top, He turned around with a gun drawn and told Belle to surrender. Belle panicked, spun around, and ran, leaving Billy with no choice but to shoot him. The other version comes from the kid himself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? After his escape, the kid told his friend John Meadows, whom he visited once he left town, he slipped his small hand out of his cuffs,
Mm-hmm.
whacked Belle over the head, and jerked Belle's revolver out of his holster.
Mm-hmm.
Then told him to throw up his hands. But instead, Belle turned around and ran down the stairs, and Billy shot him.
Mm-hmm.
This explains the 2 gashes found on Belle's head, the scuffling sound which was heard by the groundskeeper, Gottfried Goss, who was standing outside by the back door and caught the dying Belle as he rushed into his arms. Also, it explains why Belle ran instead of pulling out his own gun and shooting as he fled. After all, Belle was a veteran lawman.
Yeah.
So, at the restaurant, Ollinger heard the shots fired and immediately darted outside. As he rounded the gate into the yard of the courthouse, he heard a familiar voice say, "Hello, Bob." He looked up and saw the kid at the window with his own shotgun pointing right at him.
Right.
At that moment, the groundskeeper came running round out from behind the building, saw Ollinger, and yelled out, "The kid killed Belle." Ollinger replied, "Yes, and he's killed me too." The kid then shot both barrels at his tormentor and killer of his friend, John Jones, and Ollinger was dead. Now, what were you going to say?
The shackles.
Oh, I haven't finished the escape part yet.
Okay.
So, next, the kid told Goss, the groundskeeper, to toss him up a small pick that was laying on the ground and told him to go saddle a horse.
Okay.
So, the townspeople made no move to interfere as the kid took his sweet time in leaving.
Mm-hmm.
After using the pick to free only one leg from the shackles,
Okay.
the kid went out on the balcony and saw a small crowd forming, watching him from across the street.
Okay.
So here is an eyewitness statement that testified against Billy the Kid,
Mm-hmm.
that he killed Belle. He stood on the upper porch in front of the building and talked with the people who were in Wortley's, but he would not let anyone come towards him. He told the people that he did not want to kill Belle, but as he ran, he had to. He said he grabbed Belle's revolver and told him to hold up his hands and surrender, and that Belle decided to run and he had to kill him. He declared he was standing pat against the world, and while he did not wish to kill anybody, and if anybody interfered with his attempts to escape, he would kill him.
Okay.
So, after arming himself with revolvers and a rifle, he went down the stairs and out the back door. As he passed the body of Belle, Goss heard him say, "I'm sorry I had to kill you, but I couldn't help it." Once he went outside, Goss following him with the saddled horse. They passed the body of Ollinger, and Billy the Kid kicked the corpse and said, "You're not going to round me up again."
Yeah.
So the kid saddled up on his horse with some difficulty due to the shackles dangling off of one leg, and he rolled out of town.
Mm-hmm.
And the townspeople stood there and did nothing to stop him. Some say out of fear, and some say out of sympathy.
Right.
So where were you going?
The shackle is the debate.
Of how he got his hand out?
No.
Of the handcuffs? Oh, his foot out of the shackles? He used a pick.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
People have tested the theory and had it recreated by a true blacksmith and everything. A form-fitted shackle like they had then, because they were made custom per person, would have been damn near impossible to have in a short amount of time to pick open just the one.
Well, according to this eyewitnesses accounts, he didn't. He was there for a long time.
Oh.
He took his sweet time escaping.
Okay. Because there was, I don't know, they said like they had the show I watched.
Yeah, we watched it together.
Yeah.
Like it was like the wonders
timeline,
of the world or something.
something like that. But they had like a timeline of how long it would have taken him to shoot him, pick the shackle off, run to get on the horse, and then take off. And they were like, it's not possible in the amount of time
Well,
provided.
I mean, I can't tell you irrefutably because that everything in this is fact because it's not. This person read a lot of books about Billy the Kid and did a lot of research and then compiled his own biography of Billy Kid to the best of his knowledge, which with what we know now,
Yeah.
based on eyewitness accounts
Yeah.
and not newspapers and Pat Garrett's biography on Billy the Kid.
Right. Right.
And so based on what he has compiled, the story from Billy himself and eyewitness accounts is that he broke it with a pick and he took his time doing so.
Okay. I mean, that would make more sense.
Yeah.
If he had
I
more
always
time.
thought what was more widely debated was him getting his hand out of the handcuffs.
Oh no,
But it
everybody.
was really Billy the Kid was well known for having small hands.
He had smaller hands than he had wrist, which made it even easier. Which
Yeah.
that doesn't really make sense to most people, but like he was well versed in what, like basically cattle rustling and moving and stuff.
Yeah.
So his forearms were freaking massive because of how much moving he had to do, but he still had that small dexterity hand, which made it easily to slip off. Like they've proven that multiple times over.
Yeah.
So
And the movie does a take on it of like him taking his time getting out, but he was using like hammers and different things on top
yeah,
of the pick, not just a pick.
yeah. I mean, if he had more time available than what was the theory that we watched tested,
Right.
it would make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
So okay.
So instead of making a run for the border, which at this point he really just needed to,
Yeah.
the kid hung around in the country, dropping by on friends and telling them about his escape.
Right.
Like it was a vacation.
You gotta brag.
Anyway, his friends advised him to leave the territory, but the kid was confident he wouldn't get caught again, and he told them he would first go back to Fort Sumner to get some money.
Oh, somebody slapped this kid. Jesus. Just go somewhere else.
So for the next 2 months, the kid hid out in different locations in San Miguel County, but mostly in Fort Sumner.
Right.
There were a number of Billy the Kid sightings at this time, but how many of them were real is up for debate.
Yeah.
Regardless, it appeared as though the kid was hanging around in all of his old haunts and had no plans of leaving New Mexico.
Gotcha.
So, meanwhile, Sheriff Pat Garrett was doing a low profile search on Billy the Kid.
Right.
This time, he wasn't forming any big posses, nor did he plan to catch him alive.
Yeah. The wanted dead or alive thing went out the window. It was just wanted dead.
His plan was to sneak up on the kid and kill him in cold blood.
Ooh. Ruthless.
That's how I feel about it. I added that. That's not how he worded it.
Mm.
So by early July, Garrett had received word that the kid was in or near Fort Sumner.
Okay.
Basically, he was fooling around with a girl, and the girl's brother didn't like that. So he
Sounds
turned him
about
in.
right.
That's the gist of that. So with the information on the kid's whereabouts, Garrett took John Poe and Kip McKinney with him.
Okay.
Men he could trust to keep their mouths shut and not question his actions.
Right.
It was July 14th, 1881. The kid was warned that the law was looking for him in the area, so he hid out at a sheep herder's camp. But by the afternoon or evening, he decided to ride into Fort Sumner.
Okay.
Garrett had searched the area and even sent Poe into town to look around. Becoming frustrated, Garrett was thinking about leaving, according to what he wrote in his novel. The kid, in the meantime, was hiding out in town, unaware that Garrett was in town as well.
Oh.
He visited with friends and sweethearts, going from one house to the other, his normal routine. It was getting late, and the residents of town were all heading in for the night, and Garrett slipped out of the shadows and went to Pete Maxwell's house to ask him about the kid.
Ah, okay.
While Poe and McKinney waited outside, Garrett entered Maxwell's room and woke a sleeping man. At that time, the kid who was at a friend's house was getting hungry, and his friends told him that Maxwell had butchered a yearling and to help himself to it.
Ooh,
So the kid grabbed a butcher knife, stepped outside, and walked across the plaza to Maxwell's house.
Okay.
As he approached the house, he almost stepped over the two men who were sitting down outside Maxwell's room.
Oh.
The men rose and told the intruder not to be startled. The kid did not recognize the men and backed into Maxwell's dark room. Once inside, he walked over to the bed. In a low voice, he said, "Pete, who are those fellows outside?" Garrett was sitting at the foot of the bed, and Maxwell lay still and whispered, "That's him." The kid walked closer to the bed and again asked, "Pete?" Then he saw the silhouette, a figure sitting in front of him. The kid moved back slowly and said, "Canis?" He went backward in a cat-like movement. Then Garrett jerked his gun and fired twice. The
Damn.
kid fell to the floor. Then both Garrett and Maxwell bolted out of the door. The
Wow.
kid was shot through the heart, and he gasped for a minute or two and died. The men outside huddled at the door and heard the kid's death rattle.
Wow.
Certain the kid was dead, Maxwell got a candle, and the men entered the room. They found the kid lying on his back in the middle of the room with a gun in one hand and a knife in the other.
Damn.
This is the story that Garrett told and has been widely accepted.
Oh, yeah.
But is it how it really happened?
Uh,
Was the kid really armed? Or did he even have his gun drawn?
I don't think he would have had his gun drawn.
If he didn't die right away, why didn't he shoot back?
Right.
Especially if the gun was in his hand.
Right.
Anytime you see movies of someone holding a loaded gun ready to fire getting shot, the natural reaction is your body pulls the trigger.
Well, your natural reaction to getting shot is to tense, so you instantly pull the trigger.
Right.
No matter what you're aiming at.
So, was it really coincidental that Garrett was there, or was it a trap?
Oh, it was 100% a trap.
According to McKinney, the person that sent him over there, Garrett tied up and gagged one of the kid's girlfriends and was in the room waiting for him to walk in.
Wow.
I don't know. It all sounds a little sus to me.
Yeah.
So the residents of the town were awakened by the gunfire and walked out into the plaza towards Maxwell's house. Upon learning the kid was dead, men were shaking their fists at Pat Garrett and women were weeping.
Yeah. Oh,
Garrett,
I wasn't expecting that. Okay.
yeah, he was loved. They loved him.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Garrett allowed the kid's friends to take his body across the plaza to the carpenter's shop to give him a wake.
Mm-hmm.
The next morning, the Justice of the Peace, Minor Rudolph, viewed the body and made out the death certificate. Pat Garrett actually rejected the first death certificate and had him make out another one written more in Pat Garrett's favor.
Oh, well, of course.
So the kid's body was then prepared for burial, and at noon he was laid to rest next to his two friends, Tom O'Fallard and Charlie Bowdry.
Okay.
Now after Billy's death, Pat Garrett was viewed with a lot of suspicion. A lot of people believed it to be foul play.
Oh,
But just as many were grateful to him for getting rid of the outlaw.
okay.
Because he was so widely viewed as this vicious criminal through the newspapers.
That's true.
So, to win back the court of public opinion, Pat Garrett partnered with Ash Upson to write the biography on Billy the Kid,
Oh.
where he painted Billy in a sort of half devil, half angel light. If you
Okay.
read it closely, you can feel the remorse from Garrett in his writing and accounts.
Yeah.
Which I
Anybody
guess
can
is
think that.
another reason why he painted him in such a bad light.
He can fake it.
In the end, though, the book made a Judas out of Pat Garrett. People did not like him turning on his former friend and killing him.
Right.
The biography turned Billy the Kid into a legend and Pat Garrett into a villain.
Yeah. If you didn't catch that reference, she was talking about like Judas as in like Jesus and Judas.
Yes. I will say, after reading the biography prepared on this website called aboutbillythekid.com, where I got all my information,
Mm-hmm.
I can see that history has been very unfair to Billy, and then they have made him into this big bad outlaw of all outlaws, when he really pales in comparison to a lot of really bad outlaws at the time. Like,
Yeah.
outlaws that were in this story.
Right.
And, like, Jesse James. Like, Billy the Kid didn't rob banks and trains. Like,
No. He was only an outlaw because he was running.
Yeah.
That's pretty much
I
what it
mean,
comes down
the
to.
way I see it, he was an orphan who kind of accidentally happened upon a life of crime.
He
At
did what he
like
had to do to
yeah.
survive, is basically what it boils down to.
And then he ended up being the fall guy for a lot of shit because he was
Yeah.
just some dumb kid.
Well, wasn't dumb by the sounds of it,
No.
but he
But
was he
like
was viewed that way.
yeah,
Yes.
that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he definitely had, I don't know, like think on his feet, like kind of mentality, like I
Yeah,
don't
he was
know.
very street smart.
Yeah.
I'll give him that. He was very street smart. Gullible as fuck, but street smart.
So what do you think? How did I do on the story of Billy the Kid? That's a big favorite of mine, and I hope I did well.
Well, since I only knew bits and pieces of the entirety of the story, I think you did great, because I don't like I had to listen 2 weeks in a row to figure out the whole story, but hey, it's great. You did great, babe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You got a fact for me.
I do. Okay. The episode releases on October 9th. So,
Okay.
as following my pattern, I have facts about October 9th.
We're getting so close to the wedding.
I know. We're only a few weeks away.
It's so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Are you nervous?
Probably not as much as I should be. I'm more nervous about shit falling apart on us. Like
Yeah.
the fact that our officiant hasn't called us back yet.
Yeah. We might have to find a new one.
Maybe. And very last minute, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
So, on October 9th of 2006, Google acquired YouTube, which that doesn't, like, that's an okay, whatever fact, but it actually kind of makes sense because I watched the live show after this show that I watch on a regular basis, and he's been discussing why he had to make more options for people to watch his videos, because a lot of people who are against what Google portrays or doesn't portray, they're refusing to watch YouTube because Google owns YouTube. So I was like, oh, that makes sense why Patreon is becoming, as you put it a while back, Patreon is becoming the new cable TV, basically, because you're
Yeah.
paying to watch what you want to watch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from what I've gathered, like a lot of podcasters have it, and basically, like they do like just random shit on live on
Yeah,
Patreon.
I think it has to come down to like a popularity. Like, if
Yeah.
you're popular enough, because you do have to pay for Patreon. Like, they get
Gotcha.
part of everything. So, but we're not that far yet.
No, I don't even
But I
know
do
if
have
I want to do
ideas.
that.
I do have ideas if we ever cross that line. So, but anyway, my other facts. In 1992, a fragment of a meteorite landed in Peekskill, New York, smashing a 1980 Chevy Malibu.
Okay.
The meteorite only weighed about 28 pounds, maybe 13 kilograms.
But even then, with enough force.
Oh yeah, that's flying from outer space. Come on now. It's a terminal velocity. So I was gonna pull a fast one on you and really throw you for a loop and pull out some Dolly Parton conspiracies because you love Dolly Parton.
I do love Dolly Parton.
And I'm not gonna lie, you run your admiration for Dolly Parton pretty damn firm with my mom. So I was like kind of tripped up the first time I heard it. But Dolly Parton being Dolly Parton, she put a real kink in that one.
Oh.
She went ahead and confirmed and denied the actual conspiracies I was going to go over, because she's just like, one of them is, does Dolly Parton have tattoos? Because you've never seen her wear anything other than long sleeve shirts for a hot minute now.
Right.
And there's like this picture that looks like a little butterfly, and it's like, oh shit, she's got tattoos. You know what Dolly Parton did? She went on an interview and goes, yeah, I have tattoos. And it all started from, I had a really bad surgery and I wanted to make a good thing out of a bad thing. So she put a cute little honeybee over a little,
Scar.
Yeah, over a scar, but it was over like I wanted to say honeycomb, but that's not like a bee's nest. So she just made a cute little thing. And then she's like, and I got a couple more since then. And I'm like, well, damn, couldn't do that one. So I was like, okay, what about her having like her breast reduction, and it was all because she has a spinal injury from having such a massive chest and stuff like that. Yeah, no, she audibly laughed when asked about this in her interview, and she goes, "I've never had spinal problems. I have had a breast reduction, but it wasn't because of that." She goes, carrying around about 45 pounds on your chest isn't easy, but I don't have back problems. And I'm like, I'm more terrified by the fact you just said that's 45 pounds on your chest.
Yeah, they're big.
Yeah. So, that being thrown out the window, I had to come up with something else, right? And I haven't done a cryptid in a hot minute. So I thought I'd do a cryptid. And because we just watched the newest version of The Little Mermaid with Annie,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you said something about loving sirens. So how about I do some sirens for you?
Well, sirens, mermaids, pretty much the same thing, right?
Technically, they are the same thing.
Yeah.
So sirens actually come from Greek mythology.
Okay.
All
I
right.
knew that.
They are described as human-like
Mm-hmm.
with alluring voices.
Yes.
And they first appear in the Odyssey.
Yes. I knew
The
that
Iliad
too.
and the Odyssey? Yep.
Yeah.
They come from small islands called the Sirenium Scoplia.
Uh-huh. You forget
Which,
that I listen to Greek mythology to sleep.
I know.
Too.
But there's more to this, okay?
Okay.
Those are real islands, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, they're called the Anthemusa? Anthemusa?
Uh-huh.
And they're all surrounded by dangerous cliffs, which, knocks into the lore there.
Uh-huh.
But the origin of the name of Siren is actually pretty contested because a Dutch linguist, Robert S. P. Beeks, I hope I said that right.
Okay.
He said that the verbiage is pre-Greek, okay, for sirens and Latin and all that stuff. But others say that Seria and Ario mean a binder or entangler through magic or song,
Okay.
which is siren
Uh-huh.
in Latin. By medieval times, the word mermaid and the word siren became synonymous.
Okay.
Okay, which is where we get the iconic thing. And this is where things start getting a little more interesting because I was caught off guard by this. In medieval times, to be called a mermaid or a siren was actually a vulgarity. It's complete and utter insult. I'm like, oh, okay.
Okay.
Now, when you think of a siren, what do you think of? Because I want to know this before I get into this.
I mean, I think about like basically the Greek mythology when you say siren, which is beautiful humanoid like half fish, half human creature that lures men to their death with their siren song.
Okay. I'm going to throw you for a loop because that's not Greek mythology at all.
Oh, I thought it was.
Nope. That's Hollywood.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I actually think, when I think sirens, I actually think monsters. Like, they have like they can cover their imagery based on like what you hear in the Odyssey. They sung the music that like made it so beautiful to them.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So like they sing and it
see
makes them look so beautiful.
Yeah, but it makes them look that way. But they're actually like some
monsters.
Horritorous.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, that is what I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, although the first imagery that we think about appeared in the Odyssey, there is no imagery or description in the Odyssey. It allows imagination to be taken hold of.
Okay.
They just describe what happens and let you think. Now, Argonautica.
Argonautica.
Yeah, that one.
Argonautica.
Sure.
Whatever.
I personally feel like this description is a harpy. Okay? But during the 3rd century BC, sirens are described as half women, half bird.
Okay.
Okay? By the 7th century, they adapt and alter a little bit the bird image, which is the songbirds. I didn't catch. I didn't get it. I was like, it's a siren. How do you come up with a songbird being the siren? But,
Okay.
all right. By the 10th century, there's an actual like 10th century dictionary. They describe sirens as birds from the chest up and a woman from the waist down.
That's weird.
Yeah. And the image that is provided with it, which is drawn and painted and whatever, gets a little more weird because it's both men and women. Like, there's men, half man, half bird, man on the bottom. Imagine that one.
Okay.
Anyway.
There's people like that on that show. I like Ugly Americans.
But men being depicted as sirens completely disappears by the late 5th century. So
Okay.
we maintain women are sirens, or there's a femininity to
The Siren.
the siren. Now the appearance of the mermaid is during the 8th century. Okay, and this is an Anglo-Latin catalog, the Liber Monstorium, basically the Library of Monsters.
Okay.
They call them sea girls or maidens, described as like, a woman with scaly fishtails.
Uh-huh.
So this is our depiction of women, of mermaids. Now, between the 8th and the 10th century, there's evidence maintaining both images, the bird and the fish, are still maintained. Okay. Now, if we go to follow the lore, it gets rough. But this is where apparently sirens come from. Sophocles.
Sophocles. Yeah.
No, Sophocles. Sophocles. Sophocles.
Sophocles.
Yeah. According to him, Phorcys is the father of sirens. And he's most people regularly just declare that the father of sirens is actually the river god Acleus. Boy, I really loved Greek mythology back in the day, but this is getting hard. Now, the mother is where it gets really long and really interesting, because the mother in most lore is either a muse named Terpsichore. Hey, we just talked about this, Terpsichore. Ah, man. Or Melpomene. Yep. Or Calliope. Or Stereope. Or Calydon, which is the daughter of King Parthenon.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit. Now, during the literature play, Helen, Helen calls upon the winged maidens as the daughter of Earth. So, kind of throws the whole lore off again. Okay. Though they do lure mariners, like in every depiction, they lure them in. In a lot of these, they're depicted in meadows that are completely like flowered. Just think of like a field of flowers, dandelions and sunflowers and stuff, and they're little birds just calling them in. Not sea creatures at all. Like they're rarely depicted as sea creatures until well later on. Okay. So it's I was confused. But there is an actual exact amount of sirens, which I was not expecting, because I was just thinking it's a cryptid. There's got to be plenty of them, right?
Right.
No. Apparently, according to the Odyssey, the low end of the depiction here, there's only two. Only two sirens.
In existence.
Okay. And according to according to Hygienius.
Hygienius?
Sure. I hope there's 4. and that's the max. All versions of them are named. However, there are literally 17 different names for each and every single one of them. And several of them are close enough in spelling, they're just like one or two letters off, that they might as well have been the same damn name. Oh, I was so mad. I was like, I'm not writing down all these names. Nope, nope, nope. But according to Ovid, the companions of Persephone, the Sirens, are actually given wings by Demeter. Does that sound right? Demeter?
Yeah.
Okay.
The god.
Yeah, the god. Demeter is looking for Persephone, and he calls upon the Sirens and gives them wings. That's how they become the birdie creatures,
Okay.
so they can look for Persephone. Now, according to Hyginus, they were cursed with wings, so they're still winged creatures, not fishy creatures, even in this. But they're not looking for Persephone, they're just cursed. So, I don't know. The variants are depending on the author.
All right.
Okay. Now, the story that explains how they go from bird to fish is Hera's story, the queen of all gods.
Mm-hmm.
She's compassionate to the muses and the sirens, and she wants a competition. You both sing damn good. Who's better? Well, sirens lose.
Oh.
And the muses pluck every single feather from the sirens and create a crown for each one of the muses. This creates a suffering, and the sirens fall to the seas, white with embarrassment, quote unquote.
Okay.
Yeah. They land near the modern islands of Sauda, and this is how those islands are formed, according to that mythology.
Okay.
Now, in the Argonautica, Jason is told to bring Orpheus.
Why is there a random ass, simple ass name like Jason in the middle of Ordeus and
Right. I believe there's a Ken and a Tom too.
Yeah, what the fuck, bro?
Yeah, I don't know. That was. I mean, think about Jason and the Argonauts. Argonautica.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway. Um. So Jason is told to bring Orpheus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, during this adventure, they start hearing the Sirens song, right? And Jason winds up playing. Is it Jason or is it Orpheus? I mixed up my notes, so I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, one of them winds up playing the lyre, the kind of like a looks like a guitar, but it's very weird shaped. Okay, he winds up playing this to drown out the siren song to help his crew get through the whole situation. However, one of the crew members winds up hearing the siren song over the lyre, and tries to jump off the ship to the rocks, following the mythology of sirens bring you to your death. Okay, but he's saved by Aphrodite.
Okay.
Yep, that's in the Argonautica.
Aphrodite.
In the Odyssey, the Iliad and the Odyssey, Odysseus is actually curious of what it actually sounds like.
Okay.
The siren song and what they might actually be saying. He's advised 1.5 million times by every freaking crew member not to do this. It's stupid. Odysseus advises Xerxes to tell the entire crew to put beeswax in their ears. This will prevent them from hearing what the siren song and all that stuff.
Okay.
But tells them, no matter what I say, no matter what I do, do not untie me. I just want to know what they say. Of course, he's tied to the bow of the ship and is begging for them to untie him. let me fall. Let me go to the sirens. Let me go to the beautiful women of the land. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a thing. Later stories explain that if you hear the siren song, but you don't die, the siren will die.
Oh.
So, might play into that lore. I don't know, because that part, I've read the Odyssey, one of the biggest novels I've ever had to read in my
Yeah.
life.
I'm pretty sure I read some of it for school.
I read the Iliad and the Odyssey, and I regret reading them. I should have just watched the movie. It would have
I
been
think I
easier.
watched them.
Although I'm sure that the movie doesn't portray right. But
Right.
anyway, following that understanding, that might explain why he had them. Odysseus had them tie him to the bow of the ship
Right.
because he was helping his crew and other future explorers and stuff. Although his tail is fucked. um, Now, Pliny the Elder, this random dude from
I
the
talked about him
yep,
in one of my dumb deaths.
yep, first century Roman historian,
Yes.
pure fable. He declares that the siren is 100% fable. There's no whatsoever in Greek mythology or whatever that declares these could have ever been any form of critter, except for in India. India definitely had these.
Okay.
That's according to Pliny the Elder.
All right then.
Yeah. According to what he believes, in India, they have some critter that puts you to sleep before it eats you.
Okay.
Yep. Now, 99% of the stories, the siren song lures you to your death.
Yes.
This is all throughout Greece and Asia Minor. And the weird thing is, though, there are other stories, the 1%, that believe that the sirens are actually guides to the afterlife. Okay. Noted by Jane Ellen Harrison, a British linguist, they call to your soul, not your flesh. Which there's an interesting connection across ancient mythologies because of the Egyptian Sphinx. They sing you to your death.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they're also half creature, half human. When Christianity overtook this, overtook paganism,
Yes.
as we unfortunately have to become aware of more recently. Not more recently, but like are admitting it more recently. During the 4th century, they discouraged the belief
Mm-hmm.
of the siren altogether, and they changed the term to jackals in Isaiah. It's in the Bible, and then they declare them as owls in Jeremiah. Same creature, same story of what it's doing, but they're now jackals and owls.
Gotcha.
And it's in the Bible, so they're like even talking about the same mythology.
Okay.
Come on now. I just slapped myself on the forehead for some reason. Clement of Alexandria actually says that they're prostitutes.
Okay.
Okay. I don't exactly know what Clement of Alexandria is, but apparently it's a big, like, historical notation.
Okay.
So I apologize for not doing more research into this, but I didn't feel it was necessary. But they declare sirens are prostitutes. Basically, they're of worldly temptations. Reciting reiterations of this come later in the 4th century Christianity. Um, Now here's the fun one, because I love certain literature more than others.
Uh-huh.
Guess what major classic literature actually talks about sirens in a way you wouldn't think about sirens being talked about?
I don't know.
Dante's Inferno, the Divine Comedy, Part 2, which is Purgatory.
Mm-hmm.
He just calls him an ugly creature. When Dante is allowed to look closer at the sirens, he really thinks they're desirable women. He's like, oh man, that's a beautiful woman of temptation, Christianity influx there, you know. Um, he's completely fascinated by it. And then the angel that's walking him through his path, or not the angel, the individual that's walking with him. I forgot his name. Sorry. He goes, "Yeah, that's a siren," and states that Ulysses was led off course by the sirens. Fun fact, though, Dante wouldn't have had access to the Odyssey or the Iliad to know that. So the fact that it was written in there, kind of mind blowing.
Yeah.
Now, I know that like there's a time overlap and stuff like that, and there's a weird lineup. So how do you have not? According to a lot of researchers, his access to the Iliad and the Odyssey would not have been there. So that's why I said, fun fact, he wouldn't have had access. So the fact that it's written is really cool. I had to explain that because I know somebody's going to be like, but he could have. Sorry, researchers are saying he didn't. Okay. And you're gonna find this one interesting. Da Vinci himself talks about sirens at one point.
Oh.
Yep. He says they lure you to, or they lull you to sleep so they can kill you. Just like India's monsters.
Uh-huh.
During the 17th century, I'm getting pretty close to the end here, many authors and sailors are claiming that sirens are real. And,
Okay.
this is where we get into the sailors' side of it. Okay. And they even swear there are some sole survivors that were found by other ships. There hasn't been any significant growth in popularity of sirens. The lore is there. We know of the lore, but pretty much until the Little Mermaid wasn't a big like popularity to a siren. But
Okay.
now they're in like they're. I know this for fact. The siren is in Supernatural.
Yes.
Okay, because I have to fact check myself now before I say shit when I'm talking about Supernatural, because Murray Laveau kind of put a kick in my ego. So, but like I said, up until The Little Mermaid came out, there wasn't really any popularity to a siren in anybody's knowledge.
Okay.
But
But there were mermaids in Peter Pan.
yeah,
Yeah.
but there
Which was
wasn't.
before. Well, the Little Mermaid book was probably maybe written before Neverland. I don't know.
I don't know exactly which one
Yeah,
came
because the
first,
books
but
came out way before the movies.
The Little Mermaid made mermaids popular.
The book or the movie?
It doesn't matter. The Little Mermaid.
Okay. I wasn't sure if the book was actually popular because before he died. Because from what I've heard recently, the author who wrote the book,
Mm,
he wrote it about himself. He was the Little Mermaid.
yeah,
And the story was like basically him projecting him being gay and transsexual and not being allowed to be
yeah,
and being in love with a straight man.
right. Yeah, you did tell me about
That
that.
the worlds can't collide, you know?
Right. Um.
So
Well, the
I wasn't sure if like it was kind of like a case like with my favorite painter, Van Gogh. His paintings didn't become popular until after he died.
well, that's the case for a lot of people,
Yeah.
for a lot of artists. But one of like pretty much my last couple notes of this was just like you said. It's in Peter Pan, but here's the problem: sirens and mermaids are seen in basically any maritime movie of any sort
Yeah.
because it's part of the lore. But that's it. And the two most notable of popularity that have anything to do with sirens or mermaids is Pirates of the Caribbean and The Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
Those brought popularity back to, oh shit, mermaids. And
Yeah.
then we had that whole thing about the people that decided I found a mermaid, and it was, I hate people that do this because so many people are fascinated by cryptids, and some jackass went out there and took fucking half a monkey and half a fish and glued them together and put it on a roadshow. That was like during the 50s or 60s.
Oh yeah, they have a lot of those kind of things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very disappointing. because there's
You just made me
such.
think about House of the Thousand Corpses. Have you watched that movie a lot?
Yes,
Do you
baby.
remember that?
Yes, baby.
Yeah.
I have seen them. I have. What's the other one? Because it's not how it's.
Devil's Rejects.
That's it. That one. I actually thought that was like the first movie. I was wrong, and I was thrown off when I got to watch House of a Thousand Corpses. I was like, "Whoa, the dude's alive!" They're like, "Yeah, this is the first one." I'm like, "Oh, my bad."
I want to watch them now.
I mean, I okay. When it comes to those, I love horror movies. I really do,
I was
but
hoping you
it's
would.
just like too much gore, like for no reason gore.
Yeah. You didn't do any research to people like actually like finding any evidence of mermaids'
There
existence?
hasn't been any real evidence.
No.
No, never. Other than like depiction. So okay, when it comes to evidence, here's the thing. When it comes to a cryptid, and this is my opinion only, there is truth to every story ever told. Some. It may be just the most minute thing in the world,
Right.
but there is some truth to every story. And for there to have been stories of something that can sing to you and crash your ship, whether it be a bird or a fish, still throwing me off. But whether it be this case, there was always a creature that got your attention and lured you to your death in some form or fashion.
Yes.
There has to be something out there that does this. I don't know whether it's literally a half person, half
Fish.
something,
Bird.
fish or bird.
Half bird, half fish.
Listen,
Yeah.
if there was ever a bird just come trotting up to me and a dude's wang is hanging out the bottom half, I'm done. I'm just like, nope, I'm out.
Dude, in that show Ugly Americans that I love, it's like New York City with all these like every cryptid monster, everything ever thought of lives there. There's
really
literally these half bird, half people dudes. They have like half bald eagle, half people, and they're flying around and they just shit on the street and the sidewalks. It's hilarious.
You sure they're not pigeons? That's a thing.
I think there's pigeon people in it too. Honestly, there's everything you could ever imagine.
Yeah, I don't think I ever got into that show too much.
Yeah, it's very much like comedy and like really, I think it's great. But
I feel like we've discussed this before. I don't care for stupid comedy.
Yeah, it was never it wasn't a popular show. There's only 2 seasons, but I loved it. It's one of my favorite shows, and I wish they would bring it back.
Super unpopular opinion here. I don't like Napoleon Dynamite.
I love Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah. And the movies that went right along with
and
that.
like Nacho Libre. Oh my god.
No, Nacho Libre, the only reason I'm okay with that movie is because it's Jack Black. And Jack Black is the coolest dude. But no, I'm thinking like, what's the one where she's a pregnant teenager?
Juno?
Yeah, Juno.
Oh, I love Juno.
Didn't like Juno. Didn't like the one where, oh my gosh, what's his name? Seth Rogen.
Yeah.
He's high off his
Seth
ass.
Rogen.
No, I love Seth Rogen.
Okay.
No, I love Seth Rogen. But it's stuff where he's not playing strictly.
Pineapple Express.
Didn't like. I hated that.
Well, you don't smoke weed. So.
Exactly. I do not do
Makes sense.
drug movies.
Yeah. I don't know.
Like,
when it came out, I was really into doing drugs at the time.
That makes sense.
So, like, it was hilarious. And I still think it's funny because it reminds me of when I was a teenager.
So, what's the word of the day?
What's the word of the day? I don't fucking know.
Sorry, everyone. Looks like the microphones broke mid-sentence.
Yep.
So, yep, that's the end of the episode for now.
Yeah.
Catch you next one.